大家好，欢迎收看《首饰全身镜》，我是介系首饰的主编罗世廷。在这个单元里呢，我们会和许多首饰相关从业的朋友们，以及喜爱首饰，对于怎么样挑选、佩戴，甚至是设计首饰有独到见解的朋友们，和我们一起聊聊他们和首饰间曾经发生过什么样轰轰烈烈、感人肺腑，甚至是缠绵悱恻的故事。听别人说故事，就像是照镜子，我们会在其中发现到一部分的自己。那么，就让我们看看这个镜子里面藏着什么样的世界吧。
Hi everyone, this is Amélie. Yes. Thank you very much for having this interview with us, especially it's in your vacations.
Exactly. My pleasure.
I've heard that you work as a jewelry designer in France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when were you interested in jewelry design?
Actually, I can't really point one day where I said, I'm going to be a jeweler. Oh. It's something that came gradually. So I started by learning arts. I went to art school and studied applied arts. And then I specialized in textile design.
Uh-huh.
But when I finished that, I never worked in textile design. I wasn't thinking about going to work for like a textile design company. Uh-huh. So I started working, but as a salesperson, nothing really fancy or very interesting to me. And I started doing jewelry because it was easy, because I was just assembling different pieces together.
Yeah.
So at some point I was frustrated with my work, which wasn't really interesting to sell to people. It was practical because I had money, but it wasn't really what my soul told me to do. That wasn't really fulfilling.
Uh-huh.
So I was frustrated with that, and also with what I started doing with assemblage, assembling things together, because I could only work with what the retailers could propose me, like shapes, materials, and things like that. So I decided to go back to school.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when I entered the school AFEDAP, which is in France.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a 2 years course in contemporary jewelry. Oh. And then after that, I was launched. I started my own company, and now I work with my own brand. And I also teach jewelry with workshops at my studio. So that's how it started.
I think your creations are very interesting, and I think that there may be some elements in your creations, like you like to use brass as your materials. Do you have any consideration about choosing the materials?
Brass is quite easy to find and it's cheap. Because when I went back to school, this school was expensive for me.
Uh-huh.
So to work with precious materials, it costs money, and I didn't have a lot. So brass is very practical. Also in France, when you work with precious metals, it's overviewed by the government, and you have to have certain formalities to...
You have to get a license or something like...
Something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's a bit annoying.
Yeah.
Because the government asks a lot from you, and you have to have the bookkeeping very updated. So because I didn't want to do that, I choose to work with brass, so it's easier.
And I discovered that you like to engrave on the brass, right? You like to create many textures, like papers, leathers, or maybe leaves.
Yes, it depends on what what I find, and because I take whatever is around me.
And you did a lot of research. I saw on your Facebook.
I love that. To me, it's really important. It's part of my creative process to research and explore different techniques. And also, I do that because I don't like so much the plain metal. I like to put my touch on it. So that's why I do textures, because also it's kind of my imprint.
Your fingerprints.
Exactly. So to me, I leave a mark on the metal, and it's different from one piece to another. So each piece has my mark on it.
So in order to do so, you may need to create your own tools, right?
Sometimes, true, but mostly I use one base, which is the roller mill. So it presses on metal and leaves an imprint on it, or I hammer. So it happens sometimes that I texture the hammer to do my own texture.
Yes, I'm very curious about how do you make the texture like the leather?
Leather, I'm not sure which one you refer to, but sometimes I use the sandpaper. Or what do I use?
So you hammer it first, then you...
No, with the roller mill, I take the metal that I put it like a sandwich in between two sandpapers, and then I put into the rolling mill, and it leaves its imprint on the metal. But mostly I use hammers. Like here, for example, I have a ring, and I used lace. A real piece of lace that I roller milled with the metal, and it left a mark on the metal.
But the lace was pretty soft, right?
Exactly, it is soft, but you have to know that metal can actually take lots of imprints. So I can remember when we studied and started in the FEDAP course, they did a test with a hair.
Whoa!
So they put a hair onto the metal and put it inside the roller mill, and it left a mark on the metal.
Whoa.
So usually organic materials work much better than plastic materials. So for example, at the market you take a net that would be made of plastic. If you were to have an imprint of it, it wouldn't work because the plastic would
be squeezed.
Exactly. It would crash, so it wouldn't left a clear mark, whereas organic materials work much better. So paper, wool, any type of fabric, and works really well.
Apart from the jewelry design, I find out that you also take part in many kinds of the other artistic forms.
I enjoyed doing that when I studied art, and when I went back to school to study jewelry, we also had classes where we would draw and
sketch
and paint, but it's not part of my regular practice.
Okay.
I do it on the side because I enjoy it. I'm an artistic person, and mostly I would use photography, but I don't necessarily link it directly to my work in jewelry. I think the different artistic practices, they nourish me. They are nourishing my catalog in a way, and it's adding up. At some point, it comes out into jewelry, but not in a direct shape. It's not directly inspired from what I did before, but it's like nourishing me.
What will you do for the regular practice?
Artistic-wise or generally?
Generally, or the jewelry design.
Nothing special actually, because I have a lot of ideas and I have to choose one and develop it before I take on another one. So nothing special, it just comes out of me.
Whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I also, like I said before, I like to research. So whenever I'm in the studio and I'm bored with what I'm doing, because I have to do a lot of repetition, and I'm not really a big fan of repetition, so I just put that on the side, and then I have some materials around, and sometimes I have this idea I had for a moment and I have to try it in real life, into the material. So that's my process. I would try things because sometimes your ideas, they're good in your mind, but in reality, into the material, they are really different. So you have to try, and that's what I do. Sometimes I take time away from my work to especially do research. And usually it takes the form of just one idea, and then I develop. And if it doesn't work, I have to adjust proportions. Maybe it's the thickness or the size. So I do different prototypes. And then I choose one idea and I do a collection.
So you usually came up with one idea, then these ideas will separate it into many different kinds of the patterns. So
what I usually do, because I have so much ideas and I have to focus on one, otherwise I would just go everywhere. I choose to work with collections. So I choose one idea that I develop in different pieces. So I would each collection has its own flows. I try to have a declination, so I don't necessarily do rings, bracelets, earrings, and pendants for every collection, but I try to develop different pieces, but from one idea.
Oh, okay. Could you tell us what jewelry means to you, maybe for your life or for your wills?
I would say that first entering into art school, I was very much interested in fashion. Sadly, I didn't enter the school. Instead, I studied textile, which was good because actually it opened up many different paths for me.
So the fashion and the coolness are not, they cannot go together?
They sure do. They can go together, but the way I found for me to link both of them, my love for fashion and I used to love fashion. Now it's a bit different because the industry is different, but actually what I found is I love to do things with my hands. So I linked the two together. So to me, jewelry would be a way to show yourself, to present yourself to the world. And to me, it's a detail. I don't do very big jewelry. I usually do things that are a bit smaller and really a detail. To me, it's the way you choose to present yourself. So you would be looking at someone and coming back because you saw this little thing that you had on you.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's my way of looking at jewelry.
So you mean that from the details, then we can find our own personality in it, and to show it to the world.
Exactly. So to me, jewelry, it's the way you choose to present yourself to the world.
So it's kind of like the connections between one and another, or one to the world.
Could be, yeah. Yep. It's one way to put it, exactly.
How do you think the jewelry market or jewelry marketing in France or in the world now?
The jewelry market is enormous. It's huge in France. We have so many jewelry makers. So that's why also I choose to be different.
They all do the traditional jewelry or
you have both, but the traditional ones would be the maison. They would be the high-end sort of jewelry.
Cartier or something.
Exactly, Boucheron, Cartier, Dior, all those old houses that do very expensive jewelry. So there would be a bit more traditional. Also, all over France, you would have a smaller boutique, bijouterie, and they would be more classical. So. But you have also another market that is developing a lot with very small designers and very small businesses that would usually show what people are seeing everywhere. They all show the same kind of jewelry. And I think I'm not looking to follow the trends or do exactly what people do. What's really important to me is to nourish my soul and my artistic way of life. But for the moment, this choice I've made to really be true to myself with my designs is putting me a bit on the side in a special market that is more pocketed, a smaller market.
In a small market, yeah.
So I'm not really, the way I see things going on now in France, I don't really like it actually. People tend to do all the same things. Those usually don't last very long because they can make one collection that is on mark, that is close to the trend, but for the next trend, they wouldn't be necessarily armed, or because usually they come out of business school. They're not creative people. So they won't be able to do collections for the next trend. That's my view on it. It's not really maybe a reality for some people, but it's my understanding of it.
Maybe they don't nourish themselves, and they don't have other things to show to the people.
True, they might just do it for business. And to me, it's different because I do it as a passion.
Yeah, that's very important.
That's where you touch people.
Yeah.
And I find that my customers are real. They are not really the trendy people that like to have this piece because everybody has it, or to be like the same people. I think my customers like to be different a little bit.
Like to have their fingerprints on it.
Exactly.
Much for having the interviews, and it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, James.
Thank you.
如果你喜欢我们的频道的话，请不要忘记帮我们订阅、按赞以及分享哟。这期的内容有没有让你们对首饰的世界更为好奇呢？或者大家有没有想起什么样的首饰的故事可以和大家一起分享呢？也欢迎在下面留言哦。那么这一期的首饰全身镜就到这边告一个段落，谢谢大家的收看，我们下次再见。